So one of the features about this pathology is that it recruits allies, and it recruits them into the protective other role. And these allies believe the shared delusion is true because of their professional incompetence with narcissistic borderline and dark personality manipulation. And so there's two aspects of that. One is that protective other role. So if you understand the transgenerational transmission of trauma, that there's a trauma pattern in the attachment networks of the allied parent that's in the pattern of abusive parent, victimized child, protective parent. And in the current situation, the reality is just parent, child, parent. But because of the unresolved trauma, the allied parent is adding those adjectives. So instead of just parent, child, parent, it's now abusive parent, protective, or victimized child, protective parent. The targeted parent is the abusive one. The child is a victimized child. And it's very important for the allied parent to fill that role as a protective parent. That's a little bit of a corrective change in their trauma that's trying to work itself through. And so that's a very distinctive feature of this pathology, is that need to be in that protective parent role. And if you're a protective parent, you need to have a victimized child. And so they create the victimization of the child, get the child to believe they're being victimized. As soon as the child says, I'm being victimized, now they can come in the protective parent role. And so they will be very resistant to taking that child out of the victimized child role, very distinctive. But what we're talking about now is that the surrounding mental health professionals get captivated on their own, what's called countertransference, their own unresolved trauma pattern in their brain that's got an abusive parent, victimized child, protective parent. And so when they get presented with that narrative of a victimized child and a protective parent and the whole pattern, they join on in the protective other role. So it's like they join the allied parent, and they're both now protecting the supposedly a victimized child against the abusive parent, but none of that's true. Okay, it's all a trauma reenactment. That's a delusion. And that's why I say, if the mental health professional believes the shared delusion, they become part of the shared delusion. They're getting captured on their own trauma reenactment, and they're creating the shared delusion. They're communicating to the child that their delusional fears and delusional beliefs are true when they're in fact a symptom of pathology. And so that's the fundamental feature about understanding how these mental health people get allied, is they're getting captivated on that protective other role. And they're particularly vulnerable to that because we're mental health people. We come in to help people, and oh my goodness, especially, victimized children and abused children. So we're already biased in that favor of that helping, to not be skeptical. And then if you get their own countertransference stuff, they just blend right into it. Particularly the individual therapists are particularly vulnerable to this, but any of them, legal professionals, can get caught because they're not aware of the balance. And so if they've got any of the countertransference stuff, boom, they immediately go into that protective other role, which is often what brings them to the family courts. They want to do that.